The Browns, they're putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The 2024 season is over.
Lamar Jackson can't win the playoffs. He'll win a third MVP, though, so that's great.
Drew Sample is the most important piece of the Bengals offense next year.
Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. Kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
Well, we're almost live from Hamilton, Ohio, but I guess that's where the show is being broadcast from technically, because the guys know how to show up for work, but Kenner doesn't. But, is what it is.
Good try.
Welcome in. Off
at least
the bench,
things.
presented by United Dairy Farmers.
The good news is about working remote is that everything always works right away,
Very
and
smooth.
it's efficient. And Kenner's equipment's always ready to go.
That's right.
So that's the good news about doing these remote shows. We've never had one single issue with Kenner out of the office.
To be fair, you're right, because even when the mics work, there was the weird humming noise from the fan and the laptop the last time.
That's right.
But we're good. We're golden. And also other things for me to keep in mind, maybe don't log in with just 4 minutes before the show. Maybe
Well,
maybe that would have helped,
It is what it is. We're here now.
It is.
We're here now.
If we were on time, think about how shocked our live chat on YouTube would be if we were on time. And we can't ruin their Friday. We have to stay on schedule. We've set an expectation here of being 2, 3, 4 minutes late every single day. So we have to stay, big C consistency.
Like the World Series, the first pitch isn't at 8 o'clock. It's
No,
at
no.
8:08.
Come on. Did you watch Thursday Night Football last night? That didn't kick off till 8:25.
8:25.
Yeah, come on.
That's actually a very good point. I mean,
a
look,
great
every time
point.
there's that's one of your better ones, to be honest, and there's a lot of great ones. That's up there at the top. But you know what? It's a Friday vibe. I mean, you were a DJ a little bit ago before the show started. I mean, you were just playing it into the mic.
I was playing, what was that song called?
Well, when you get knocked down, what do you do?
I get up again.
That's right, because they're never going to keep you down.
Tub thumping? Is that what it's called?
I don't know. I've heard it done. I probably should know what it's called.
Now I have to just Google it again. I'll tell you what. That's a great song. The lyrics make no sense, really. And it's just a good vibe song. Yeah, it's tub thumping. Good song.
That's right.
Tub thumping.
Yes.
By Chumbawamba.
By Chumbawamba.
Tub thumping by Chumbawamba.
That's right.
That's right.
Very nice. But again, happy Friday, everybody. This is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. And as Elliot always says, this is a very serious sports talk show.
Very serious. Very serious.
The most.
Yes.
Let's see Casey. Casey, how we feeling today? How you doing?
We're doing good. We're doing great. I'm sitting over here at the producer's chair. I'm here in the office.
That's right.
Oh,
2 days in a row. What a shocker.
Yeah, what a shocker. Yeah.
If you watched Chatterbox
working
Bengals
remote.
last night, you're a very, very rich man. I gave out 2 props, and Craig informed me that they were the same as Booker as Trent's, so I crossed them off and said we'll just rock with Craig's props, and he hit them all.
Okay,
So,
how about that?
So very, very rich fans of Chatterbox Bengals if you tuned in last night. If not, it is available now in podcast form everywhere you listen to podcasts.
Okay, how about that? Good plug.
I like it. The Bengals have a big one with the Eagles coming up on Monday. We'll get to that coming up here shortly. We're going to go a little 3 and out with Jacob. He's going to give you 3 reasons why he believes the Bengals are going to get a big win on Sunday, but also 3 reasons why he's a little concerned to match up with the Eagles as well. We'll go 3 and out coming up here just around the corner. Also, we talked about the Bearcats and Colorado, that matchup on Saturday night. I think it's like a 10 o'clock kickoff. Earlier in the week, and one of us had mentioned the fact that they actually have a legit shot at potentially getting to the Big 12 championship game, of course. Is it likely? I mean, that's a separate debate. But we're going to take a look at the path for the Bearcats to get there. It obviously starts with taking care of business on the road against Colorado, which will be difficult. But at the same time, you look at the Big 12, you look at some of the matchups this weekend, BYU and some others, there's a path for the Bearcats. It obviously starts with Colorado, though, taking care of business. We'll get to that around the corner. Ohio State, Nebraska. Ohio State coming off the loss against Oregon a few weeks ago on the road at Eugene. How do they turn that around? They have Nebraska. But is it a trap game? If you're coming off a tough loss and getting all the criticism that you've been getting for the last 2 weeks, can you really count Nebraska as a trap game as they potentially look ahead to a top 5 showdown with Penn State? And then we'll give you our NFL picks. That's a long-winded and wordy rundown, but that's what we got lined up for you here today on Off. Before we get to all of that, let's send it over to Elliot for Elliot's headlines.
Whoa.
Elliot loves three things: Joey Votto, David Bell, and leading off the bench with top headlines.
That's right. So today, not a ton of headlines, but Thursday Night Football last night. If you missed the game, Rams win 30-20 over the Vikings. Teams are now 0-5, coming off of games against Detroit. The Vikings have now dropped 2 games in a row. Darnold, 2 touchdowns, 240 yards in the loss. You have Justin Jefferson having 8 catches, 115 yards there. Matthew Stafford, 279 yards, 4 touchdown passes. GOAT. Demarcus Robinson had 2 touchdowns of his own. The return of Puka Nacua, and Cooper Kupp resulted in 12 catches, 157 yards, and a touchdown. The game ended with the most egregious no face mask call that I've ever seen. Here's the thing about the face mask call. We have the technology to review that instantly. This doesn't have to be like throw a challenge flag, let's go to review, go to commercial, let's spend 10 minutes on it. We have the technology to see what happened right away. Why are we not using that?
So fun fact for you, the Los Angeles Rams every year for the last 3 years have proposed in the offseason to allow a play like that to be reviewable. A face mask on the quarterback, a roughing the passer, all hits on the quarterback. The Los Angeles Rams for the last 3 years have proposed those to be reviewable. Last night, they benefit from that being shot down by all other 31 teams.
The irony. Listen, it's just, I'm not going to sit here and bash officials because we know what's going to happen. They're going to miss calls. They can find an illegal shift out of the sky. I saw Jolly tweet this out. They can find an illegal shift illegal motion out of thin air, but they can't see an obvious face mask right in front of you. What's going on?
After the game, the ref said they didn't have a good angle.
Didn't have a good angle. He was right in front of you.
Right there.
It's just the NFL has to do something about this nonsense. I know you can't challenge every single play. You tried it with pass interference. It didn't work. But there has to be a eye in the sky that's able to see an obvious face mask and go like, all right, guys, throw the flag, right?
I would think so.
Especially late in a game like that with the game on the line. And it is wild how often the Vikings are involved in these crazy calls late in games. Usually it's in the postseason. But that was a wild fish last night. Look, we've spent a lot of time this week talking about Cooper Kupp and even Matthew Stafford, who's been rumored to be traded. But if you're the Rams after that game last night, my goodness, when that team's healthy, they're as good of an offense as there is in the NFL. I mean, again, he didn't really connect with Cooper Kupp too much last night. He did in the end zone, but Puka Nacua back, that was a big difference maker. Does that game last night, do you think that changes the mindset of the Rams? Do you think that they're actively looking to trade Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp right now?
I think they all stay. I think Stafford and Kupp stay in L.A. for the remainder of this season because the Rams are right in this thing. The Rams are very, very healthily in this thing right now. The Seahawks are 4-3 atop the NFC West. The Rams now just 3-4, and they play Seattle next week. They have a chance to be tied for the division lead before this trade deadline.
Yeah.
I don't think the Rams are selling anything. They have enough pieces to be a competitive team this year. I don't think they're necessarily a Super Bowl team like they were a few years ago, but I think they could fight to win that division with how banged up the Niners are. So I don't know why they would sell at this point after that win. This seems a lot like we were talking about with the Bengals going into the Browns game. If you lose, do you trade a T. Higgins or something like that, and then you win and the whole mindset shifts? It feels like the mindset has shifted now in Los Angeles with the Rams, and they're going to – I don't know if they're going to go all in and make any additions. I would be shocked if they did that, but certainly expect them to stand pat, especially with their stars.
The World Series starts tonight. It is Yankees in L.A., 8 p.m. Garrett Cole taking on Jack Flaherty. Dave Roberts has come out and said that there is no possibility that Shohei Ohtani pitches in this World Series, which is a bummer. But to each their own. Some very, very, very sad college basketball news. Yeah. Amir Abdur-Rahim passed away at age 43 yesterday. He was undergoing a medical procedure and passed away from complications. So very, very sad. A great head coach. I think he was the coach at Kennesaw that took Xavier down to the wire in that March Madness game. Certainly one of the rising stars in the college basketball world, and very, very sad to see.
Yeah, just a few days before the season. I mean, that's got to be tough for the whole program and players as well as his family and friends for sure.
Brutal. College football news. Pittsburgh, they have not lost a game this season. Whew. They moved to 7-0. 7-0 after beating Syracuse 41-13. Kyle McCord was 35 for 64 with 3 touchdowns. Oh, Nope, those went to the other team.
Ah.
So 3 pick sixes, 2 more interceptions after that, with a grand total of 5 interceptions. Truly one of the worst games of all time. As an Ohio State fan, well, I guess there's 2 Ohio State fans. You sad that you lost McCord?
Yeah, big time shout out to Kyle McCord's dad, who went into Ryan Day's office and said, if you don't guarantee us the starting job, we're leaving. And kudos to Ryan Day for saying, see ya, pal, because he stinks.
Yeah, he might stink.
I think Ryan Day's greatest accomplishment ever is leading that terrible QB to an 11-1 record. That's incredible coaching. What an offensive mind. Maybe a QB whisperer. This cools down Ryan Day's seat quite a bit.
That's funny. I thought that same thing last night too, as I'm watching that disaster take place. Keep in mind, in case I don't know if you have these lined up, I had sent them to you, but if not, I'll read them anyways. But I mean, the media has not been kind to old Kyle McCord throughout. I mean, look at some of these headlines. Syracuse's Kyle McCord throws 3 pick sixes in historically bad first half versus Pitt. It continues. How about the New York Post? Syracuse quarterback Kyle McCord ends game from hell by sacking himself in disastrous loss to Pittsburgh. Not only do they say ends game from hell, but they mention the fact that he sacked himself to end the game. How about ESPN getting in on the fun? Kyle McCord throws 3 pick sixes and 5 interception horse show from Syracuse. Just a disastrous night. My thing about all of that, Jacob and Elliot, is how the heck, as a coach, do you keep him out there? It's not like you're benching him for the
60
season.
times.
Yes, like I think that was as bad of a performance by the coach more than Kyle McCord. There are nights where you just don't have it. It's okay to bench a kid and pull a kid. It doesn't mean you're benching him for the season. But I put that performance last night more on the coach than anybody. Kyle McCord didn't have it, but it shouldn't have got to the point to where you're throwing 5 interceptions and 3 pick sixes. Take him out. That's on Syracuse's head coach at the end of the day. But I thought those headlines were, well, they bullied him. They bullied him. He might have earned it. But,
I loved it.
Yeah,
that sacking
hell,
himself
no
was just the cherry on top of a beautiful, successful hate watch. Kyle McCord's been putting up really good numbers this year. A lot of unsuccessful hate watches for me and Ohio State fans everywhere. So it was nice on a standalone game to see him really stink it up.
To really stink it up. And final headline. Broncos Josh Reynolds was shot twice after leaving Denver area strip club. He was treated for minor injuries.
I picked him up on my dynasty team because anyone that's going to the strip club that late in the middle of the season is a guy I want on my squad.
That's right.
And that's bad. You just, I mean, with the gun violence,
you
is getting
got to be
out of control. You can't even go to strip clubs anymore.
That's right.
I mean,
3 a.m.
it's
strip
getting out
clubs,
of
you get
hand.
shot. I mean, where can you go?
You think
I don't have to say whose America it is.
Where is the love? Where is the love? But those are your headlines.
If we didn't have to worry about copyright, we'd play the whole song.
Correct.
Where is the love?
Where is the
It's a great
love?
song.
Some say people crying, soon heard I hear them crying, and you practice what you preach, and then you turn the other cheek. Father, 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 help us. We need some guidance from above. People got me questioning. Where is the love? I think it's time for a break.
That was incredible.
That was, I mean, you want to talk about team chemistry. That was some fantastic stuff.
What is
all right, but you're right.
What does a high five look like?
I don't know. We gotta go.
Look at that.
We gotta go like all the way into your. I can't get it.
I can't get it either.
People want to know what's going on. Yeah, I think they're questioning what you guys were leaning in for. I guess
that's
what
right.
was going on there. Yep, kind of weird. But we'll be right back. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Damn, this is a Friday
What a
show.
Friday.
I love it. We'll be right back. Best part about all that, Casey didn't mute the mic, so that was even better.
Of course not.
All right, this is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, and of course ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton.
The Wing.
1410 the Wing, the W-I-N-G, the Wing. 1410 ESPN Radio, Dayton's radio home for Ohio State football. We'll have Ohio State and Nebraska coming up tomorrow at noon. We'll get into that Ohio State-Nebraska conversation. Here around the corner, is Nebraska considered a trap game? We'll have that here shortly as well. We'll also get into the Bearcats in Colorado, the significance of that matchup, because, again, you start looking at the Big 12 standings, and we mocked the Bearcats coming into the season. I did. I know Jacob did. Elliot was a true fan. He stuck by their side. Got to respect that. But they have a shot. they have a legitimate shot, and we'll get to that coming up around the corner. But we talk a little Cincinnati Bengals now. I know you talked a lot of Bengals last night. I know. I see the face. You with the face. The Cincinnati Bengals, you talked a lot of Bengals last night. Chatterbox
right.
Bengals, of course, you and Craig doing a great job as always. But we'll talk a little Bengals here as we head into this matchup with the Eagles. It's a big one. I mean, right now, when you start out 0-3 and 1-4, I feel like every week we say, man, it's a big one. It doesn't even matter the caliber of opponent that you play at this point if you're Cincinnati. It's just about trying to dig yourself out of the hole that you dug yourself in to start the season, which they've done a good job the last couple weeks. It hasn't looked pretty. It was not a pretty win against the Giants. It was not a pretty win against Cleveland, but they all count the same. And at the end of the day, they're right back in the playoff conversation, something that you guys did not think was going to be the case at 0-3 and 1-4. But yet here we are. But this matchup with the Eagles fascinates me a little bit because I think when you look at the Eagles in the NFC, they're kind of very similar to Cincinnati. These are two teams with quarterbacks that were taken in the same draft who both led their teams to a Super Bowl. They did not win the Super Bowl, and they've been trying to get back ever since. And these are two quarterbacks that injuries have kind of banged them up since their Super Bowl appearances. And we know when healthy, these are two of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Jalen Hurts seems to be healthy now and playing some of his better football. Last year was not a good year. And then we know how good Joe Burrow is capable of being. Last couple weeks have been a little dicey. Still efficient, but not the explosive offense we're used to seeing from Joe Burrow and this Bengals offense. But this is really a big one for both teams because people are not buying into the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles still seem to be a team that they're not even being given credit in their own division while everyone's drooling over Washington right now. A win over Cincinnati will get them in the driver's seat in that division, or at least more respect in the NFC. And then a win over the Eagles for the Bengals obviously does wonders for the confidence moving forward. Because let's be real, every win so far, I've come into that studio with you guys, and it's like, yeah, we got to win. We didn't feel good about the win against Cleveland. We didn't feel good about the Giants win or the Carolina Panthers win. I made the joke, your list of wins looks like the draft order at this point. You got a good quality team in the Eagles coming to Cincinnati. Just missing the Patriots. No kidding. But no, with the Eagles coming up, a win over Philadelphia would be absolutely huge for the confidence of the fan base and this team, and it would honestly signify that the Bengals are officially back if they beat the Eagles on Sunday.
And that's absolutely right. That's, I think, what this game is for everyone. Obviously, it's important for the record when you start 1-4. Every game's important for the record. But this game's important because not only have the Bengals not won at home, but exactly like you just said, they haven't really beat a contender or anyone even close to being a contender. And the Eagles are certainly at least somewhat in that realm. We can argue whether or not they're actually a Super Bowl contender or not, but they certainly have big names on both sides of the ball that are going to make this game, a star-studded showdown, especially offensively for both squads with maybe the best two QB and wide receiver duos in the entire league. So we'll see what the Bengals are going to be able to do this weekend. It's a massive, massive test against a really good team that the Bengals, against every good team they've played so far, there have been massive shootouts. A 41-38 loss to the Ravens, a 38-33 loss to the Commanders, 26-25 to the Chiefs. Every contender the Bengals have played has been high-scoring games. And I think this week that's going to be the big test is can the defense hold up against these elite weapons?
I think the Eagles and the Bengals are very, very similar in the fact
Absolutely.
that both had very high expectations, both have elite offenses. And I think you're seeing a little bit of a disappointment. Eagles certainly have had a better season than the Bengals so far, and there's no doubt about it. But I think they're very similar. Like if you had a round robin, my round robin teams with the Bengals, the Eagles, maybe the Cowboys, you lump the Cowboys in there, and maybe one other middle of the road team that has high expectations but isn't completely living up to them. The Eagles this season, they're 17th in points scored per game. They're 9th in yards per game, 22nd in pass yards per game. Their time of possession ranked is 29th in the NFL. They're 23rd in third down efficiency, converting at 34%. They're just one of these teams that I think that should be a lot better, and they haven't been performing like that. Now, the one thing that the Eagles are very, very, very good at is running the football. They are second in the NFL in rushing. That's the area of concern for me, at least heading into Sunday. It's somehow you're going to have to bottle up Saquon Barkley. I watched – who did they play last week?
Giants.
They played the Giants last week. I think he had 5 40-yard rushes, 5 separate 40-yard rushes. That's how good that guy is. So I think if you're coming into Cincinnati on Sunday, I think the key is somehow find a way to stop him and force Jalen Hurts to throw the football. Jalen Hurts, when forced to throw the football, hasn't been a good quarterback. That's just at least so far this season. You have 2 elite wide receivers and a very, very good tight end. Dallas Goedert's a great tight end.
Hasn't practiced this week.
has not practiced
So
this
he
week.
didn't play last week, looking like he's not going to play this week.
Okay, well, so that's great. That's phenomenal. So now you just have to worry about one less guy. I think Devontae Smith is very, very good. I think he was held for 1 catch for negative yards last week against the Giants. Obviously, they didn't really need to throw it. But saying all that, I think the Eagles and the Bengals are very similar teams. Bengals, in my opinion, have the edge. It's at home. You have to win a game at home eventually.
That's right.
You have to win a game at home. This is the game I think you do it. You upset the Eagles. I think, though the Bengals are favorites, according to Las Vegas, I do think I would favor the Eagles in my personal brain. I just think a guy like Saquon Barkley can just shred the Bengals at any moment. The good news is, again, though, the Bengals have been battling the clock, it seems like, more than opponents this season, and you're facing an Eagles team who doesn't hold on to the ball for very long.
Right.
That's the good news. That's the positives.
All right, this is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, 1410 ESPN Radio in Dayton. Again, the Cincinnati Bengals at home, 1 o'clock the kickoff. They are a 3-point favorite with the Philadelphia Eagles coming to town. We just talked about how big of a game this is. But again, with Jacob diving into the details of this game last night on Chatterbox Bengals, we'll do it here on Off the Bench as well. A little 3 and out. Jacob is going to give you 3 reasons why he feels good about the Bengals' chances against the Eagles on Sunday, but also 3 areas of concern. 3 and out. Jacob, take it from here.
The biggest advantage for the Bengals this week is Trey Hendrickson. And obviously that's a big-time advantage most weeks because he's one of the best edge rushers in all of football. But Jordan Mailata, the all-pro left tackle for the Eagles, is out. He was placed on IR a few weeks ago. So old Bengals friend Fred Johnson is going to be playing left tackle for the Eagles this week. If you remember Fred Johnson at all in Cincinnati, you know he's not exactly the best left tackle. So hopefully Trey Hendrickson's able to eat this week. I fully expect him to. And the other part of that equation is that Lane Johnson is the Eagles' right tackle. The best right tackle in football has been for many, many years. I don't expect Sam Hubbard to usually do a lot in the pass rush game. This week, he's going to be erased, probably at no fault of his own. So Trey Hendrickson's going to have to step up immensely on that left side and beat Fred Johnson, which I expect him to be able to do at a relatively consistent rate. On the other side of the ball for the Bengals offensively, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are going to be lined up across from 2 rookie corners. First-round pick, Quinyon Mitchell. Second-round pick, Cooper DeJean. Darius Slay, the normal Eagles number 1 corner, hasn't been himself this year, and the Eagles rookies have taken over the starting role. They've been very, very good since they've took over. Some of the best PFF coverage grades in football for DeJean since he moved into that full-time starting slot, but they haven't played wide receivers like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and to be honest, there's not a lot of wide receivers like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins in the league, and certainly not a lot of duos that have that much kind of power on the outside. So I would expect this to be a welcome to league moment for these 2 rookie corners. I think these wide receivers are going to have a big-time chance to dominate this game and really open it up on the offensive side of the ball for the Bengals. And when we get to concerns here in a second, you're going to see that goes both ways. Health is the final advantage I think is massive for the Bengals this weekend. We had 2 big-time scares this last week with Orlando Brown and Geno Stone both going down and not returning in the game. Geno Stone aircast, carted off, ended up miraculously being okay, both trending to play this week. Orlando Brown is going to be huge for the Bengals against the Eagles' pass rush, which I'll touch on here in a second. But the Eagles lead the NFL in explosive plays. And last season, the Bengals were worst in the NFL at allowing explosive plays. So far this season, that trend has continued. Geno Stone, though he hasn't been phenomenal so far this year, that's exactly what he was brought in to prevent, were those explosive plays, to get some turnovers, get some big-time plays for the Bengals defense. He had his first pick in stripes last week before his injury. Having him back and healthy for this game, hopefully he's going to be able to play at a high level that we expected him to play at when we signed him in free agency and dial back those explosive plays for the Eagles offense. He's certainly our best chance to do so. And both of the Bengals linebackers are tied for 3rd in the NFL in tackles, Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson. They're going to have to bottle up Saquon Barkley because we know what he can do in the run game. And that takes me to our first concern is the run defense. These last 2 weeks, it's been much, much better than it was early in the season, but it was a massive worry for all Bengals fans going into this year and through the first few weeks of the season. Now that it's gotten a little bit better, we have a big-time test against Saquon Barkley this week, and obviously it is a healthy unit, which we haven't seen out there much. Hopefully it can change the tide from what we saw earlier this year, but we saw a Bengals team bottle up Derrick Henry for the entire game until overtime where he breaks a 50-yard run that gives him 95 yards in the game. you have to play for 4 quarters, and that's what it's going to take against Saquon Barkley. The Eagles can beat you in so many different ways, so trying to eliminate that run game is going to be crucial because I think, like you touched on earlier, the Bengals' key to success is making Jalen Hurts beat them with his arm, which is easier said than done because they have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith on the outside. The Bengals' secondary has been questionable at best this season after stepping it up the last 2 weeks against subpar offenses, and the Giants and the Browns, one of the top, most loaded offenses in the entire NFL, at least on paper, comes to Cincinnati, and Cam Taylor-Britt versus A.J. Brown and D.J. Turner versus Devontae Smith, that's probably going to be the 2 matchups that decide this game. If the Eagles are able to move the ball with ease all day long, Jalen Hurts, with time in the pocket, going back to Trey Hendrickson, he's going to have to get pressure to take some pressure off of these DBs in these one-on-one matchups. And speaking of one-on-one matchups, hopefully we're rolling a safety to A.J. Brown because so far this season, he has a 96.6 PFF grade. Against single coverage. He has been dominant. Only played 3 games so far this year, has been battling injuries, but all 3 games he's gone over 100 yards. And we know Cam Taylor-Britt has allowed a lot of big plays himself this year, so going to have to bottle them up. For defensively for the Eagles, their biggest advantage is their interior pass rush, and that is their advantage against everyone. And we know that's the weakness of the Bengals offensive line. Amarius Mims and Orlando Brown, I know myself and a lot of Bengals fans have the utmost confidence in them and their ability to erase edge rushers. But the middle with Karras, Kappa, and Volson, that's certainly where we struggle against the top of the top. And Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter are certainly in that group. They're very, very good pass rushers, 2 of the best in the league. I would expect Orlando Brown, since he is trending to be playing, to be left on an island almost all day, and the Bengals get creative on how to block Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis in the middle. But those are the big problems and big advantages for the Bengals this week. It's a fairly even matchup. Like Elliott said, these 2 teams remind me a lot of each other. Both fan bases think it's a must-win game, a prove-it game. So everyone's on the same page going into this one. It's the most expensive get-in price I've seen in a long time for a Bengals home game in the regular season, up over $200. So make sure you're using Game Time to get in there.
Yeah, and the thing that's interesting about that too, about this situation, heading into this matchup for the Bengals defense, it is nice for it's not nice, but it's different. You go up against the Giants and Browns and the Panthers, you're hoping that you don't let bad offenses embarrass you. You feel when the Panthers make a big play, you just feel gutted. When the Browns made a big play offensively, you feel gutted. Same thing with the Giants. It was just frustrating because, man, if you're letting that team do that, what are you going to do against a good team? This is different. You have expectations of who these guys are. You know who A.J. Brown is and Devontae Smith and these guys. You know what they're capable of. So it's a little bit different mindset heading into this. And a lot of times, the last time they played the Chiefs, you got a much better defensive performance from them. I'm not saying that they were shut down by any means, but you got more inspired play from them. And I think you're going to get that against the Eagles coming up because, again, it's a challenge. The challenge against the Browns and the Giants was don't let them embarrass us. Don't let them do stuff that they're not capable of doing, at the expense of us. With the Eagles, if they make a big play, it better be because of their talent and not because of a big play that you just let happen right in front of you. I think we're going to learn about the Bengals defense too because they've looked better the last couple weeks. We've been beating up on that defense all season, how historically bad it is, how pathetic it is, this, that, the other. But now some of those stats have been padded a bit going up against the Browns and Giants, but they've looked good. We'll find out if how much of that was playing bad offenses the last 2 weeks or how much of that was a truly improved defense. We'll find out on Sunday. All right, this is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wingham and Dayton. We'll talk more Bengals later on in the show. We'll get into our NFL picks for the weekend, but we're going to transition over to college football. The Cincinnati Bearcats and Colorado, they kick off tomorrow night, 10 o'clock. It's going to be a late one, of course, but all eyes will be on this matchup because I think these 2 teams right now fighting to keep their position in the race to get to the Big 12 championship game. Some people are mocking the idea of Colorado getting there. A lot of people mocking the idea of Cincinnati getting there, but if you take a look at the Big 12 standings and what lies ahead for both, the Bearcats getting there, maybe not as big of a reach as you think. We'll get to that when we come back. More Off the Bench when we come back. Elliott, you should be so proud. We're 2 segments in, and my clock management skills have just been outstanding.
Good for you.
Outstanding.
Good for you, bro.
Yep. Back-to-back 14-minute segments. That's how you do it.
That's special.
That's how you do
special. Yeah. Goat stuff.
I left a minute. You like the what?
I like the gray wall behind you.
Better than the racing stripe?
I don't know, actually.
You missed the racing stripe.
I kind of missed the racing stripe. The gray wall is not really doing it for me.
Oh man, you're tough to please.
Well, it's just like let's get
You're
a
gonna
better wall.
bullet. You're gonna the top.
Let's get a better
always
wall.
politics.
That's
always,
right,
always,
Elliot. We do need a better wall.
Why don't you do it?
we do need a better wall.
That's
Build
right.
the
Always
wall.
politics with you, Elliot. Always politics.
Kenner, why don't you like take your laptop and do it like in front of a window so I could see the beautiful Dayton skyline behind you?
If we had a beautiful Dayton skyline behind us, that'd be pretty nice. That'd be pretty cool.
That'd be great.
But yeah, this
Kyle
this
McCord
great
headline's going to go crazy during clips.
The New York fake news post behind me with the headlines, Syracuse quarterback. There you go.
Can we
There
put
you go.
Can we put Deshaun Watson behind him?
I thought we were done with the Deshaun Watson
There's the
thing.
beautiful
I thought we
skyline.
There it
the
is.
Cincinnati
There's the
skyline.
skyline.
Casey and Kinner sitting next to each other while one's in Hamilton and one's in Dayton.
Wow.
That's just the power of Chatterbox.
That's incredible work. Look at that. Now it's beautiful.
incredible.
It's beautiful.
You never know what time of day it is based on that backdrop. So, there you go. I told you I've learned that anytime you watch Get Up, that's a green screen that they're sitting in front of. Everyone thinks it's an actual big old window with the New York skyline behind them. It is not. It is not. But it looks,
It looks very
good. For them.
I did always wonder how the ESPN building was built.
Yeah.
That they had so many rooms that faced the skyline.
Yeah.
That seemed preposterous. A lot of angles that would be required. In
Ton of angles.
Yeah.
Kenner, let me ask
One
you
of the
this.
reasons.
Oh, go ahead.
No, one of the reasons that ESPN, they used to try to do a live shot of the skyline out there, but they had to stop because, and no joke, bodies were being washed up. So you'd constantly see the coroner's office out there. You'd constantly see the cops out there. So they had to do a recorded live shot because it's actual. You could see everything moving in boats in the background or whatever on Get Up, but they had to go to a recorded shot versus a live shot because, well, every once in a while you look and you kind of peek in there, you'd see there's bodies being washed up. New York, very safe place to live.
Oh,
so
that's nuts.
Did you get
what
to
were you
visit,
going to say?
Did you get to visit the cafeteria when you went to the ESPN studios?
I did not.
Oh,
I heard to know their food selection.
I heard that cafeteria is legendary.
You see it in the commercials. No, I only went. I got to sit in on Get Up and First Take.
Okay.
But there you go. By the way, what do you guys think about Skip Bayless doing all the rounds now? Like he's
funny.
doing all. I think it's he's just doing everyone's podcast. Maybe we'll get Skip on.
I would love to get Skip on. Skip and I could do 2 hours on LeBron. Skip and I could do 2 hours on LeBron.
Listen, I love Skip Bayless. Skip Bayless doesn't get enough credit.
No.
For being responsible, or at least halfway responsible for the creation of what sports talk has become.
Absolutely.
And it's become obviously terrible now. But saying that, it was electric. It was electric watching him and Stephen A. go at each other.
Supreme debate.
It was supreme debate.
Supreme debate.
My favorite thing about that, people always rip Stephen A. and Skip Bayless for that. You know who you need to blame for why that debate stuff worked? The audience.
The
like
consumer.
constantly. Yeah. Like it drives me nuts when I hear like Dan Levitard and some of these others who are like jealous because like those two just dominate in the ratings game against them. They keep saying how they ruined the sports talk world for everyone else. No, they didn't. And by the way, you also can look at some of the other great sports talk shows, even going back into New York, even with Mad Dog. I mean, that was a big debate show. They didn't call it a debate show, but it was all about people tuned in because of the drama between the two all the time. That's how that worked. It drives me nuts when they sit there and say Stephen A. and Skip Bayless ruined sports talk. Oh, I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing over there. I see Casey's up to something. I see Casey.
Is Casey up to something?
No. I was laughing.
Casey is up to something.
Yeah.
Oh, we got an angel and a devil. We got Flacco on one shoulder and Watson on the other.
There. But nonetheless, we could be.
He's gone.
Yeah, Casey. Yeah, thank goodness he's gone. Oh wait, no, can't do that. You guys get sensitive. I don't.
Professional for the radio listeners. Deshaun Watson just snuck up on Kinner on the green screen.
That's right.
So just to clue you in on what just happened on this radio show.
Thanks for
Friday
tuning in on
show,
the radio.
baby.
Thanks for tuning in on your car or in your radio.
Or in your radio.
So Elliot's a big Bearcat fan, loves his Bearcats. The Cincinnati Bearcats right now in the Big 12, 3-1 in Big 12 play, and they're going up against 3-1 Colorado coming up this weekend. Now, teams ahead of the Bearcats right now, Texas Tech also 3-1. You have 3-1 Kansas State, 4-0. You have 2 undefeated teams, obviously, in Iowa State and BYU at this point. The BYU, by the way, I don't know if you guys saw this for this weekend. Very strange. BYU is at UCF. You have 7-0 BYU. They're a top 10 team in the country, and yet somehow, some way, Jacob, they are a 3-point dog at UCF.
I saw that.
It does. That's why, again, or they're not top 10. I'm sorry, number 11 in the country. A number 11 team, BYU Cougars, again, undefeated, sitting atop their conference, going on the road against a 4-loss UCF team, and somehow, some way, they are a 3-point dog. This is why everyone out there that says the Bearcats don't have a chance, they don't have a chance to win this. I don't think the Big 12 is good at all. No. It's not a shot at UC. I'm just saying that I don't think it's as easy or simple to say that they don't have a shot. If the team that's sitting atop your division right now, your conference right now, is 4-0, they're the number 11 team in the country, and they're a 3-point dog going up against a 4-loss UCF team, this division can't be for real. I'm not buying into the Big 12. So for me to say that Cincinnati doesn't have a shot, right now they're very much so in the mix, and a win over Colorado on the road is going to get people's attention. Satterfield's offense has with Sorsby at quarterback, they've been lights out. Obviously, their deficiencies are on the defensive side, but that's very similar to what we're seeing with Colorado. They are horrible defensively, very good offensively. This is going to be a shootout, and the winner of this is very much, has a path to get to the Big 12 championship game. I don't think there's any team ahead of them right now that I'm like, I definitely fear that team. Maybe Iowa State, who's number 10 in the country. Kansas State, obviously, right there as well. They're 6-1 overall. But I do think Cincinnati has a legitimate shot to get there if they take care of business against Colorado on Saturday night.
And if UC beats Colorado, they go to Ames in a few weeks and have a chance to just control their own destiny against Iowa State. Assuming BYU picks up a loss elsewhere, they would have one loss and a head-to-head against the other team with one loss. And if UC wins out, I would have a hard time finding a way they don't go.
Big 12 gets Nato, right?
It does.
So
it would be a 4 bye. It'd be a first 4 seed.
Okay, so how about that? I'm not going to sit here and say that I realistically think that UC is going to win the Big 12. But as Kinner just said, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities. I think this is classic old Big 12, heavy power offense with a defense that's subpar. Score 45 a game, allow 40 a game. It's just that old Big 12 mentality. Obviously, things have changed now in college football, but at the end of the day, I think UC has a chance. I think Sorsby in the offense can beat just about anybody, at least can go toe-to-toe with just about anybody in college football as of this very second, offensively speaking. Defensively, they would get shredded against most teams outside of the Big 12, and in the Big 12, they would get shredded as well. But I will say this, and I kind of mentioned it earlier in the week, Scott Satterfield, it's a big testament to him that they're able to look like this, 5-2, and they look competent. You're one loss to Pitt away from being ranked. I think if you beat Pitt in that game, the Bearcats are absolutely ranked right now. Texas Tech, they lost because, again, respectfully, our kicker can't make kicks. So if you have a kicker that can make kicks and then you're able to hold on to a 21-point lead in the fourth quarter against an undefeated Pitt team who's going to be ranked probably top 15 when the new rankings come out next week, then yeah, I think the Bearcats are having a hell of a season. So good for them, good for everybody involved. It will be an absolute titanic struggle in Colorado on Saturday. My mom is there. My mom is already in Colorado right now,
Nice.
getting ready to watch the game, so she's ready to roll. 10:15 kickoff. Doesn't get better than that.
No, that rocks.
10:15 kickoff's the best. I don't think I've seen a UC game kick off this late, so that will be very exciting. But yeah, what's the spread, by the way? Do we know
6.5 Colorado.
6.5 Colorado. I might take the Cats on that one. I might take Cats plus 6.5.
I am already on Colorado minus 6.5, parlayed with Travis Hunter interception and offensive touchdown. So about to eat that lunch.
How about that? Deion's come out this week and said that he loves Cincinnati. He has great respect for Cincinnati, and I think he was very kind to our football program. So I'm ready to roll, man. I think this would be a fun game. This is the game that I had circled on the year before the season started. If you can win this game in Colorado against Deion Sanders, I'm going to call this season a win. No matter what happens, you win that game.
This would lock up a bowl game.
I don't care.
Right?
This would lock up a bowl game. Yep, this would be the 6th win. So yeah, I'm very excited. The hype of the Cincinnati football team couldn't have had a bigger turnaround since that week 2 loss or whatever,
Yeah,
week
week
2 or
two.
3, week 2 loss to Pitt. It couldn't have happened any better. So good for everybody.
Yeah, no, this is a massive, massive game for both Satterfield and the UC program, I feel like. This is the most national attention you're going to get until, if you win, maybe that Iowa State game gets a pretty big pub.
Yeah.
But this is going to be a big-time national spotlight game for two programs that are trying to build up to a point where you're actually a respected competitor in college football. And I think that's honestly where the whole Big 12 is right now. I don't think there's any team in the Big 12 that is getting the respect that I'm sure they think they deserve for winning that conference. I think everyone kind of unanimously puts them at the bottom of these 4 bye weeks and chalks up that first game as a loss to an SEC or Big 10 team. And I just don't know that that's necessarily the case. Certainly the Big 12 hasn't been the best this year, but I think there's a lot of really good players. And if UC can find a way to beat some of those really good players, then that means UC is a decent enough team. Yeah. And I think they could make some noise. But, this Colorado game is absolutely massive, and we don't want to look all the way ahead to Iowa State yet, but Rocco Beck's one of the best quarterbacks in the entire country. So we'll see how that game goes and how they're able to continue this entire season until we crown UC Big 12 contenders. But, I think this is a massive, massive test, kind of like we talked about with the Eagles, a measuring stick game for a team in Cincinnati against a team elevated competition compared to who you've beaten so far. So certainly a big, you'll learn a lot about this team, whichever way the game goes.
By the way, if they were to beat Colorado, beat West Virginia, UC at Iowa State November 16th, will we get College Game Day?
I can't tell you because I don't know the rest of the schedule. If you filibuster for about 2 minutes, I'll be able to tell you.
I think Iowa State is a very good football team. Do I think they can win a national championship? Probably not. And this is where college football's always kind of lost it for me. I think there's
no shot.
I think no shot.
No shot.
Who we got?
Tennessee at Georgia.
Okay, all right. Well, then I tried. But college football, this is where it's always lost me a little bit because I do think it's just so top heavy. That the 10th ranked team in the country is seemingly it's almost impossible to see them win a national championship.
Yeah.
But saying that, I think the conference is better than what people thought it was going to be heading into this season. I think that's fair. I just think that the bottom of the Big 12 stinks. Bottom of the Big 12 is very, very, very bad.
And you brought up a good point about Cincinnati because the other day I thought it was a little far-fetched as well, and I think you see some of the responses on social media that everyone thought it was crazy to even be talking about the Bearcats having a chance to get there. But the bottom line is Pittsburgh's a top 25 team, a very good team. They're still undefeated. We saw that last night, losing 28-27 the way that they did. It was the way that they lost that highlighted that, and we didn't pay attention to actually how well they played against a Pitt team that is still one of the best teams in the country at this point. So then you highlight that. Texas Tech, 44-41, that was the final there. Cincinnati put up a ton of points in that one like they do. They are a very good offensive team. Texas Tech is 5-2 as well. That's a good football team. You don't have losses against bad teams, and you're beating the teams that you should beat, and you had chances to beat teams that maybe you weren't favored to beat as far as that goes. So with Colorado, you beat Colorado Colorado's a brand win right now. Colorado maybe not be the biggest sexy brand out there in college football, but with Dion there it is. It's going to get people's attention if you see, especially led by Sorsby, and that offense can get a win on the road at Colorado. They're going to have their prove-it games coming up. They're going to get people's attention with the win over Colorado on Saturday night. Then they're going to be tested in a few weeks again when they have to go to Iowa State and at Kansas State. They have a shot. They do have a shot to get there, and I think that offense gives them that. It's not like they're an average offense with an okay defense that has, won them quite a few games. Offensively, they're explosive. They have a legitimate shot to, score points on anybody, and I think that gives them a good shot. I was surprised at how many people mocked it, but when you really start breaking UC down, I don't think it's as far-fetched as what many might think that they could get there. Is it likely? Obviously, I'm not putting money on it, but I do think they have a path to get there. It'll be a fun follow to see what they could do against Colorado tomorrow night.
It's not far-fetched if you believe they can beat Colorado at Iowa State and at Kansas State. If you win all 3 of those games, they're a playoff team. And the hard part about looking at the schedule at this point is what happens if you beat Pitt and Texas Tech or Pitt or Texas Tech. Then you give yourself probably a little bit of wiggle room in these 2 games, especially Texas Tech being a conference loss. If you would have taken care of Texas Tech, then you give yourself wiggle room in these 3 hard games in order to still have a shot at making the Big 12 championship. I think at 3 conference losses, you're resorting to rooting for chaos for a chance to get into the conference championship. And you're only at 1 right now, so this, maybe losing to Colorado, you'd still be able to claw back into it if you beat Iowa State and Kansas State. But it's just a tough position that UC's put themselves in with those 2 losses in games that they really should have won.
All right, this is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, and ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. Let's still stay here in the college football world. We'll talk little Buckeyes coming up on the other side. Ohio State coming off that top 5 loss a few weeks ago against Oregon. Then they took that loss into the bye week, and now they come out preparing for a matchup with Nebraska at home. But also what's coming up on the horizon is another big noon kickoff showdown with what could be another top 5 matchup as Penn State is waiting for the Buckeyes as well. So we'll get to that. Also, talk about lines, Jake. I don't know if you saw that Penn-Wisconsin line. Very, very strange as well. So we got plenty to dive into with the Big Ten. We'll talk Ohio State, Nebraska coming up, and then we'll give you our NFL picks to wrap things up here on Off the Bench. More Off the Bench when we come back. Look at that, Elliot. 3 straight 15-minute segments, while 2 14s into 16. I'm on fire today.
How about that?
That's elite.
Woo!
I might go 10 minutes on this just to show off.
All right.
Just to show off.
Let's do it.
You know? Let's get weird. Heading into the weekend. All right, this is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. On the radio side, hour number 2 of Off the Bench here. We welcome you in. Excited to be hanging out with you here today on a Friday. But yeah, a lot going on heading into the weekend. Ohio State, Nebraska, which we're about to touch on. The Bearcats at Colorado. One point I didn't mention about Colorado Buffalo or the Colorado and the Bearcats that we talked about a little bit ago. I didn't think this. You said you circled this matchup, Elliot. Colorado, welcoming in Cincinnati when the season started. I didn't, because when I watched Colorado lose the way they did early in the season, and then obviously the Bearcats, we didn't really have high hopes for them. I didn't think this matchup would be interesting whatsoever. So I am surprised at this point that it actually has the ramifications that it does. So it is pretty cool to see both of those programs turn it around after sluggish starts to kick off the year. So we'll see if it lives up.
Yeah, I mean, I circled it because I'm a UC fan, and I would like them to beat Deion Sanders in Colorado. After all the distractions and the noise that they bring to the sport, I just think it's a fun game. I think it's a fun game, and having the ability to beat some of the best NFL prospects on their home field in a beautiful setting against the most polarizing college football coach in America. I don't think you get those opportunities very often, and to have that opportunity this Saturday it's going to be very, very fun. I know it's not a top 25 matchup. I know it's not the world's greatest 2 teams, but I do think it's a fun, electric matchup, and I think if you're a fan of college football, if you just like scoring, you're going to love that game.
I think there's probably 12 fan bases that circle a Colorado game every year. I think every fan base probably gets excited for their chance to beat Deion and the Buffs, which goes back to how much he's done for that program, because that used to be a game that most people wouldn't even consider watching, because Colorado was a 1-win team, 0-win team before he got there. So we can talk about all the distractions and everything else, but the way he's been able to revive that program in terms of relevancy has been impressive.
That's the part of Colorado, too. I know people don't like Colorado, and that's fair. I think that you need a villain in sports. That's why sports is so fun, right? You get to pick the heroes, you get to pick the villains. Colorado, without question, is the villain of college football. I don't think anybody could say otherwise. Maybe you could argue in Alabama. Maybe you could argue at Georgia, in Ohio State, maybe. But even then, you don't really hate the players. You just hate the team. You hate how good they've been. Colorado's been terrible for a long time, and now everybody hates them just because of the distractions. I think that's kind of funny. Again, I'm a storyline guy in college football right now. I'd argue has some of the best storylines it's ever had.
No, I agree. Hey, by the way, you think if you would have cashed out earlier in the week that you could have afforded to go to the Cincinnati-Colorado game with your mom? Is that why you're here? Like, could you have gone if you would have cashed out or maybe won that bet? Like, are you not going with your mom because you can't afford to go because you lost all your money gambling? Like, why is your mom there and you're not? I'm just curious. You say, I'm a UC fan, but here you are hanging out with Jake and Casey and I. This was uncalled for. I feel guilty as I'm watching Jake's reaction.
I had a couple ricochet shots there, but I'm not going to do it because it's a Friday.
They weren't ricochet shots.
I was going to have.
He came straight at you.
I know, but I was going to have a ricochet shot later on in the show. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to keep it to myself.
That's boring. Boo.
Good sports talk.
Boo.
I just don't want to be mean. I don't want to be mean. Why can't we choose love? Have you ever chosen love, Kenner? Or do you just choose
Why don't we
hate?
practice what we preach?
I do know.
Turn
Seriously,
the other cheek.
Turn the other cheek.
Father, help us. We need some guidance from above. People got me questioning,
Where is the love?
All right, high five.
Choose
again.
love.
That was pretty good. Kenner, you move out of the way. It doesn't matter. The layers are.
The layers, I can't get through you.
We can't get through you.
Just in case. I flinch when people raise their hand at me. It's just a natural instinct.
Too many bar fights?
But too many bar fights. Way too many bar fights. But, you talked about the love. I know if my mom went to the Colorado Cincinnati game.
You should have.
What's the timeout?
Well, you were hating.
You were hating. We call timeouts for hate here.
Dang it.
So, all right.
Throwing a flag on the play?
We could start again. We could start again, but glad we took our timeout.
Timeout.
Fair enough. I was being a bully. But
you were
keep
being
in mind
mean.
the whole reason I have my third different backdrop.
That's
and
true.
This is only my third remote show because of the bullying
That's right.
that Elliot, but whatever. We're starting over.
Bullying that
We're
Elliot
starting
The first 2 minutes of every segment today have just been nothing.
Nothing. And it's been hurting Elliot's feelings is what it's been. And Casey's been sitting over there, he's looking at me and he's like, Elliot, you can fight back. I'll support you. And I can get that from what he's doing over here, but I'm not gonna fight back today. I'm gonna let you do whatever you need to do to me, and we'll just get on with our Friday.
You want to know what's scary about that? Like,
What?
I would actually have less of a problem. If you said you had some things you wanted to say that you're just going to keep to yourself, I think
gonna
that's
keep
the
them
worst punishment ever. Because now all I'm thinking about is, well, what would he have said? Was it my height? Is it my weight? Is it, is it the poverty level of which, I fall in the tax bracket?
No,
Like,
it probably would have been the haircut.
the hair. Oh, come on. That's just
It just looks at least from this angle, it looks like something crawled
That's
up.
what the show
it
is
just
now.
It just looks like something crawled on up there, and it doesn't look like there's a whole lot else left. It's just like the sides are completely gone, and then there's just like a little squirrel. Oh, that looks better. But when you look straight at me, it looks like a squirrel crawled up there. And I don't want to be responsible for saying that out loud, but you've made me because
I'm
you make
so
fun of me.
glad you didn't.
I'm glad I didn't too.
That's just what you were gonna say.
I'm just saying the angle right now, it looks like your hair is fake. It looks like it's like a toupee. Now it's real. See, now it looks better.
Look.
You don't need to do all that. You don't need to do all that.
No, it's not a squirrel. It's not a squirrel. It's real. It's
This
real
is the
hair.
best radio segment of all time.
Yeah,
It's real hair.
I don't know if I believe it.
All right, can we just go
this
back
has
to the
been.
love? Let's
What
just
a
go
week
back
this
to
has
love.
been.
All right.
You started the hate. You started
You did
this.
start the hate.
I questioned why you weren't with your mom in Colorado, and you go right to my fake hair.
So it is fake.
It is fake. Then I was right.
It's not fake. It's real.
We'll have to get some confirmation.
We'll
on
get
that.
to get some eyes on that.
Anyways,
Are we picking
very
games
serious
yet? Are we
sports
picking
talk
games?
show.
Are we picking?
No, we're not there yet.
All right. Well, I
We-
wanted
we-
to. Are we not picking college football games? Do we not have like a top 5 best college football games of the week? We should have done that too.
We could do that. I mean, damn. Whatever makes you
damn.
happy.
Well, I was
Because when
just
you're
saying.
unhappy, you become an angry elf when you become unhappy. So by all means, like I don't know if my mental health could handle
Angry
another.
elf.
Angry elf.
You're an angry elf.
Angry elf.
Yeah, that's what we've come down to here. Angry elf. All right. So then, do you want me to give you a couple picks?
Is that what we're doing now?
Well, unless he's got a better idea, I just wanted to give. We were going to forget. Notre Dame, Navy. Notre Dame at Navy noon. Notre Dame is a 13.5-point favorite.
Oh, I'm taking Navy. Horvath Heisman.
I like Navy. Kenner?
What if I read the other day Army Navy could potentially be a spot in the playoffs? How cool would that be if they
Fun
if they
fact
play
about
for a spot
Army
in the
Navy.
playoffs?
Yeah, this is
Their
the
game.
wildest fact I've ever seen.
The Army-Navy game against each other that's always standalone is after the final college football playoff rankings. So those teams will have to know whether they're playing in the playoff or not before they play each other. So if both teams are undefeated, hypothetically, one could get put in the playoff, the other left out, and the one that's left out beats the playoff team.
Yeah.
Hypothetically.
That's kind of insane. I mean, that would be absolutely insane. Obviously, Liberty goes down, and now that path looks a little bit brighter. But if Navy were to win, look out. I'm gonna take Notre Dame in that one though. I'll take them minus 2 touchdowns? Yeah, minus 13.5. Next game, real quick, 3:30. Number 1 Oregon versus number 20 Illinois. Oregon 22-point favorites at home.
Oregon's a good team. Dylan Gabriel's a good quarterback. It's a lot of points, but I don't know how great.
Bless you.
Excuse me. I don't know how great Illinois is. They're ranked so high just because they beat a Nebraska team that I think's pretty fraudulent at this point. So I guess I'll take Oregon, but it's a lot of points.
I'm going to take Illinois. Plus 20. Too many points for a ranked team.
Or first of all, coming into the season, who would have circled Oregon and Illinois as being a big Big Ten game? But yet here we are, because the middle of the Big Ten obviously beefed up compared to years past, obviously. But yeah, kind of cool that this is a top 25 matchup. Oregon's coming out on top, but just in regards to covering, yes, that'll be. I think they'll cover there. I think they'll cover.
Alabama's at home against Missouri, number 15 versus number 21. Alabama 18-point favorites. 18-point favorites. At home against Missouri. I'm going to take Missouri because at this point, I know Missouri's not very good, but I'm going to take Missouri because Alabama can't beat anybody.
Would it change your opinion if I told you their leading rusher and starting quarterback are both not playing?
Nope.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's why I'm taking Alabama. They opened as about a 6 line, and they're not going to have Brady Cook or their leading rusher.
Kindog?
Did that line move at all when it was announced that they wouldn't have that?
Yeah.
So what is it now? I can't see because my laptop. 18. Man, if Missouri, and at the end of the day, it still is Missouri, but you don't have your running back or your quarterback, and do you think that they cover?
Brady Cook's that whole offense.
Yeah, I'm going with Alabama bigly in this one.
Two more. Texas, the 5th team in the country, taking on number 25, Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is at home against number 5, Texas. Another little magical run. Texas is favored by 18.5. 18.5 on the road. I'm taking Vandy. Hot team at home.
I'm taking Texas. I think they're a really, really good team. I think they bounce back on the road after a tough loss.
It's still Vandy at the end of the day. I mean, I'm going with Texas, but I do find it adorable. Vanderbilt's been a good story, don't get me wrong. A very cute little story. But I saw that they put nets up in front of the student section to keep them from storming the field after, and they're going to be very
in front of the Texas student section so they wouldn't throw bottles on the field. Because they threw all the bottles.
Oh, is that what that was for?
Yes, it was so they wouldn't throw stuff on the field.
Oh, wow.
It was hilarious.
Ooh. That's a nice little troll. I like, Vanderbilt, what do you have to lose?
I know.
You might as well troll some of these bigger schools. I guess I don't mind that.
You have to hold on to this season as tight as you can.
Yes.
For as long as you can.
Yes.
Have as much fun and as many wins as you can, because I don't know when they're getting another Diego Pavia in Nashville.
Final game.
And look, it was a perfect storm, too. Keep in mind that the perfect storm, not just beating Bama, but beating Bama at home, and then doing it not even a week after you had Nick Saban, who wasn't taking a shot at them. They were just talking about the tough environments in the SEC and saying how that wasn't a tough environment to play in. Not even a week later to then beat Alabama and play that soundbite and just to rub it in Alabama fans' faces. And now they're winning football games, and they beat Kentucky. They're doing what they're supposed to. Good for them. I just have Texas coming out in this one. One thing we didn't talk about with that Texas-Georgia game last week is, do they have a QB controversy there? Because that was still that because of how that game finished and the Texas throwing stuff on the field. We didn't really talk about the fact how weird it was that you bench Quinn Ewers, you go to Arch Manning, and then you had 2 benchings. You had to go back to Quinn Ewers. It wasn't because of injury. That does set up a QB controversy a little bit. I'm curious to see how that kind of unfolds the rest of the way.
Yeah, no, I think it's not a QB controversy, honestly. I think it's going to be Ewers the rest of the way. I think that was the chance for Arch to take a hold of this job, and Quinn would never get it back, but Arch proved that he wasn't ready. So I think Texas is way too good to have any kind of hiccups when it comes to the quarterback position. They have too much talent at the other 21 positions to rely on a young guy to go through growing pains this season. Quinn might not be as talented when it comes to raw talent as Arch. I don't think that's crazy to say, but he's certainly a better college quarterback right now. And for a team that's trying to win a national championship this year and is certainly in the mix, I think Quinn gives you the best shot to do so, even though I don't think he's the better quarterback.
The final game that we are picking, number 8 LSU is on the road against number 14 Texas A&M. That spread is a pick'em. It is a 1-point spread for Texas.
Is it really?
-1. Texas A&M -1.
I have LSU +3.
Really?
From Wednesday.
Really?
That's a great bet on Jacob's part.
Great bet.
Love Garrett Nussmeier. Love LSU. I think that week 1 loss was a recipe of Brian Kelly and week 1 losses. Obviously, they haven't looked great all year long, but I think they take care of A&M this week.
I'm going to take A&M at home. -1.
Still wild that when it's all said and done, you have this. I mean, when you look at the SEC, every team with the loss, it basically invited everyone back to the party to have a chance at this thing, and LSU still very much in the mix. I'm going to go with LSU on the road, picking up a win. Again, still a top 10 team in the country. I'll go with LSU.
One game I just wanted to mention while we're doing college football spreads, Miami versus Florida State, which was circled preseason as a battle between the two favorites in the ACC, a playoff play-in game, an ACC championship playoff game. Do you know what Miami's favored by this week when Florida State takes the trip to Coral Gables?
I'm going to say
what you got?
16.
How about 3 touchdowns? -21
Woo!
is Miami over Florida State.
Woo!
Just an unbelievable collapse for the preseason number 10 team in the country. 1-6 going to the number 6 team in the country, playing for their bowl lives. If they lose to Miami this week, they're not going to a bowl game.
Boy.
And this is after making Mike Norvell one of the highest paid coaches in the entire country when Alabama made an attempt at hiring him, and he parlayed that into an extension with Florida State. He is one of the highest buyouts in all of America. So kudos to them. You're stuck with him for a long time. I hate Florida State.
Florida State gets beat up on a lot this season, but I don't think it's talked about enough how bad of a job Norvell has done.
Yeah.
It's one thing if you lose a couple games and don't live up to the expectations, but this was a team that had the talent to put them in the conversation to be the favorites to win the ACC and to make the playoff, and to even without even winning the ACC still have a chance to make the playoff. This was supposed to be a feel-good story team. They are 1-6. He lost that locker room. This is probably, we're going to talk about coach of the year candidates as the season goes on. This might be the worst coaching job in all of football. This is historically bad. How you can lose. It's one thing to lose with talent. We've seen teams who underperform with a lot of talent, but then there's just quitting and giving up. And Norvell has lost that locker room. That program. I think he, as much as he brought them forward, getting him into the national championship conversation last year, I think he's actually going to knock them back quite a few steps with this season alone. There'll be guys bailing. There's not going to be a brand that people want to, again, follow NIL money towards because they can get that money elsewhere and still feel like they could win. I think as much good as he has done just as much damage. 1-6, that is so pathetic for a guy that was supposed to lead this team, that got the money he did and was supposed to lead this team to some kind of competitive, point of the season for a playoff spot or a bowl game, and to maybe not even make a bowl game is absolutely pathetic on Norvell's part. I think he definitely needs to be criticized even more than what he has to this point.
Yeah, we saw what Mike Norvell and Florida State's culture was last year in their bowl game against Georgia. You get snubbed from the playoff just like Georgia did, and you go in and you lay down and you cry and you complain for 2 weeks, and then you get ran out of the building in your bowl game when you have a chance to prove something to the whole country. That tells you what a coach and a team is made of, and that tells you what the culture you have in your locker room is. We've seen plenty of teams miss the playoffs when they think they should have been in and have guys play in the bowl game, and that tells you what coaches and cultures are. And Mike Norvell obviously doesn't have a good one, and it's bled over from that game into this year. As soon as that game happened, I knew that Florida State wasn't going to be good this year because that's the loss of the locker room right there against Georgia last year.
Yep. And everyone took that because they were the feel-good story. Everyone felt bad for him. I said, look, there's a lot of teams that have been snubbed, and I know UCF. UCF is a different story when they did that. UCF was a legitimate underdog. UCF is one of those, you don't know how many times you're going to go undefeated and have a legitimate shot at a national championship or to contend for one. I understood why that fan base threw the temper tantrum that they did. But you're supposed to be Florida State. You want to pretend you're one of the big dogs, but you acted like you were a UCF. You acted like you were an American Conference team. You didn't act like Georgia, who was ticked off they didn't make it, but they went out there and said, well, we just got to keep grinding, keep fighting, because that's a team that was confident they had to get back there. To me, the way that Florida State acted, they acted as if they did not have the confidence that they can get back there, and that's the way that they acted, and that's what's played out right now. But yeah, he invited the quitting mentality into that locker room the second that they threw that temper tantrum not getting into the playoff last year. And I'm not saying they should have been happy about it. You could be upset about it, but there was a way to do it, and that wasn't it. So,
exactly, 100%.
All right, this is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. Another game, too, as we wrap this portion of the show up. Penn State, number 3 team in the country. They have Wisconsin coming up. They're at 5-2 Wisconsin on the road. Penn State, the number 3 team in the country, going up against an unranked Wisconsin team. Only a one-possession favorite in this one, a 6.5-point favorite on the road. What do you think of that line?
Crazy. Makes no sense to me. Penn State's been a good team this year, but Casey, the resident Penn State fan in here, has told me that they're not good and I shouldn't trust them. So I'm going to rely on him and this weird spread. I'm going to take Wisconsin in this game. I think it could get yucky. I certainly don't want Penn State to lose. I really, really want Penn State to win this game. Ohio State plays them next week. Would love for that to be a top 5 matchup, bolster the resume a little bit for Ohio State. But yeah, I think this is going to be a little bit closer than a lot of people think when you just look at 3 versus unranked. But obviously the spread tells you that as well.
All right, this is Off the Bench. We'll talk a little Ohio State when we come back. Is the Nebraska game a trap game? Again, we just talked about it. Penn State going to be on the road at Wisconsin. That could definitely be a trap game for it is a trap game. I mean, Wisconsin is definitely a trap game for Penn State heading into this Ohio State matchup next Saturday. What about Nebraska? Do you consider that a trap game for the Buckeyes? We'll discuss that when we come back. More Off the Bench next. All right, and we are back. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister in the producer chair. We got Elliot Rearing and Jacob Tissett with you here on 1410 ESPN Radio, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. Me and my fake hair. We are off and rolling here on a Friday, baby. I'm never wearing a hat again. I'm going to rock this hair. I'm never going to cut it now.
Please.
I'm just going to grow this hair out to prove how real it is.
I want to see it go down to your shoulders. I want to see if that's possible.
My hair won't grow down. I have like long. It starts to curl out and do a little fro type thing.
Oh, give me Afro Kinner.
Please give me Afro Kinner.
I have pictures. I'll show.
I would love
just start growing it out. I don't need pictures. I need an Afro.
Yeah.
All right. You know what? Deal. I'll see how long I can go without getting a haircut. My barber won't like that, but that's okay. That's okay. Ohio State, Nebraska coming up tomorrow, noon kickoff. Ohio State coming off of a bye week, and before the bye week, of course, they had to go on the road and suffer an upsetting loss on the road at Eugene against the number 1 team in the country, the Oregon Ducks. Now, again, there's so many different ways to frame this. As we discussed heading into that Oregon game, the importance of why they needed that win. Every team needs a win, don't get me wrong, but we knew the significance of what people would say about Ryan Day and the Buckeyes had they lost, considering their track record against top 5 teams or just good playoff contending teams in the past. They have not fared well, and that trend continued. Now, Nebraska is not a playoff team by any means, but it's still an important matchup coming out of a bye week, because what they have to do is be able to dominate Nebraska to remind people that, hey, we're still that team that everyone had high expectations for coming into the season. But what they also have to be wary of is not taking your foot off the gas because you're so focused on their next big test, which could be Penn State a week from tomorrow as well. I can't look at this situation with Nebraska and say that it's a trap game, mainly because I think that Ohio State, they're not in a position to overlook Nebraska. I think Penn State being undefeated going on the road at Wisconsin, a 5-2 team that they feel like they are significantly better than as the number 3 team in the country, I think that's a legit trap game, because I think it would be easy for them to take their foot off the gas and overlook Wisconsin, who has a lot of deficiencies as well. I don't think Ohio State's in that position to do so, especially coming off of a loss. Dylan Raiola has about 1,400 passing yards on the season, 9 touchdowns. He can throw the football. That offense has capabilities of being able to attack the defensive deficiencies of Ohio State, deficiencies that I did not think that they had, or at least I was told they didn't have. I was told how dominant this offense or this defense was coming into the year because of all the returning experienced players. I was told how dominant this defense was because of the animals that they have on that defensive line. Well, this is a defense that still, although they hit harder than in years past, I'm questioning just how good this defense is based on what we saw against Oregon. Yes, they looked good against the very subpar talent they played in the non-conference and only playing Michigan State and Iowa to start Big Ten play. But at the end of the day, I want to believe that this defense is better. But so much talk over the last couple of weeks about the attention to detail on the defensive side of the ball. You have Nick Saban commenting about how antiquated this defensive scheme is. Well, we've talked about Ryan Day and his coach's show and his media hits, how much attention to some of the adjustments they're trying to make on the defensive side of the ball. There's just a lot going on and a lot of focus on the defense. And if they truly were confident about how good this defense is, I don't think we'd be talking about it as much. Nebraska is capable of throwing the football and attacking these corners and attacking this Ohio State defense. Nebraska is not winning. They will not win this football game. But if Ohio State looks kind of questionable defensively again heading into Penn State, I do think there's going to be more doubts about Ohio State's capabilities of winning a national championship. Last point on this, what I want to see out of Ohio State against Nebraska. Raiola's thrown for 1,400 yards or close to that with 9 touchdowns. He's also averaging close to just under an interception a game. 7 games they've played, he's thrown an interception in 6 of those 7. If Ohio State wants to convince me and the doubters that their defense is national championship contender worthy, they have to get a pick. They have to get an interception, and they need to sack him. They need to get to the quarterback. They need to make Rayola's life miserable on that day. Of course, the built-in storyline of him one time committing to Ohio State and now with Nebraska. I think Ohio State's defense needs to approach this as a statement game. They have the opportunity to do so. I don't think it's a trap game. I think they're coming in with the mentality of putting everyone on notice and reminding everyone why they were one of the favorites to win it all coming in.
I certainly hope you're right. I hope that they're looking at it that way, and it's certainly a chance for the defense to step up against a team that was in the playoff conversation just a few weeks ago. Obviously, it's fallen apart for Nebraska over the last couple of weeks, but this is a team and an offense that looked really, really good when they beat a Colorado team that we're just now talking about a couple segments ago being a playoff contender. So I think this Nebraska team is maybe one of the best two-loss teams in the country, certainly one of the best two-loss teams in the Big Ten, and certainly one of the scariest offenses in that group. I mean, Dylan Raiola has a really powerful arm, and he's a freshman, a true freshman, so on a week-by-week basis he could be getting even better, which is definitely a scary thought for a guy, like you said, who's already put up about 1,400 yards. I'm worried about this Ohio State defense because the back end looked really, really bad against Oregon. Denzel Burke was terrible, way too many yards, nearly 200 yards and 2 passing touchdowns allowed. The pass rush was abysmal, no pressure on Dylan Gabriel, and he was able to sit back there and relax all day long. If you can't get pressure on Dylan Raiola this week, then Ohio State's defense is going to struggle. And like you said, Kinner, people are going to have doubts about them being a national championship contender because if you consistently can't get to the quarterback and you consistently allow teams to throw the ball all over you, then that's certainly a problem when you get to play higher level talent, because I'm not even acting like Dylan Raiola in Nebraska is the best team that Ohio State's going to play. That's probably going to come next week against Penn State, at least in the rest of the season than a locked-in schedule. So we're going to have to see what happens. I do think it is a trap game. I think just the nature of an unranked team at home between two top 5 road games makes it a trap game. Whether they fall victim to the trap or not, we'll find out on Saturday, and hopefully they don't. Hopefully they come out and whoop them up and down the field and show them what you're made of and how much better of a team you are on paper. It translates to the field, but I do think it's a trap game, and just hopefully Ohio State's mentally tough enough to overlook that.
The other thing, too, to keep in mind, I don't like Indiana as good of a feel-good story as they are here in the next couple of weeks. I don't give them a shot against Ohio State, but I will say this. That's an explosive offense that Indiana, to some extent, has proven that they have, right? Like, and I always do this whole, they won't do that against Ohio State. But I think we're going to find out just how dangerous that Indiana game is going to be, because if Dylan Raiola is able to throw the ball on Ohio State's defense, I'm actually very nervous about what Indiana could do against them. And that's weird. I feel dirty just saying that. I'm fearing Indiana. Like, what? I don't know what to make of that. But the bottom line is Indiana's offense is legitimate. And I don't fear them against Ohio State's defense, but if Nebraska's offense, bring some kind of resistance to Ohio State's defense, then I'm more worried about that Indiana game later on in the season, as wild as that sounds. So we'll see how it all pans out. So
one thing about that Ohio State pass rush that I feel like was propped up immensely before the season, JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer, 2 of the highest-rated edge rushers coming into the season, 2 projected first-round picks, or at least right there on that wiggle room of second-round top 50 for sure. Those 2 guys, in their combined 7 seasons together as Ohio State edge rushers, 3.5 each at this point, have combined for the same amount of sacks as Chase Young in his 2 years at Ohio State.
Ooh.
These are 2 guys who were 5-star edge rushers. Jack Sawyer from Ohio, JT Tuimoloau, top 5 recruit in the country. Guys we thought were going to come in and just carry along that lineage of Bosa, Young, elite edge rushers at Ohio State. Hasn't been the case. We've seen big-time games in different spots for those 2 guys, but no kind of consistent production. Hopefully that comes this week against Nebraska and can continue all week long, or all season long. But we see Mark Fetters put it in the chat there. Some conversation happening around Larry Johnson, the Ohio State defensive line coach. A lot of people have been huge Larry Johnson fans for the entirety of his career. He's turned out first-round picks better than basically any position player or position coach in the entire nation. At this point, with consistent lackluster pressure from the defense, we've heard a lot of conversations from Ryan Day and the media alike asking whether Larry Johnson and Jim Knowles are even on the same page when it comes to defensive play calls and schemes. I don't know what to expect for this team the rest of the way out, but the biggest thing is going to be the back end and the front 7 meshing together better than it appears they have so far, because there's a clear disconnect between the backside of this defense and the pass rushing, and it needs to get together if Ohio State wants to win a national championship.
I said last week, or after that Oregon loss, I said from people that I trust, that I know are in the know, there is some stuff going on with the coaching staff. Things aren't as buttoned up, and people aren't meshing and gelling from a coaching staff perspective. And I think that bleeds out onto the football field.
Absolutely.
And again, you could overcome that against the Akrons and the Western Michigans of the world. And as you can see, they were not able to overcome that against a championship contending team in Oregon. Now, I don't want to keep overreacting to that loss. That's the number one team in the country. You played them on the road at night. You lost by possession. I completely get that. But it was just some of the mistakes that were made aren't the mistakes that you would like to see from a team that we believe is a national championship contender.
Absolutely. And I think that's why once I was a few days removed from the game, I actually felt pretty good about Ohio State looking forward, is because you were 1 point away from beating the now number one team in the country in their place, in their best atmosphere of the entire season, when you played the worst game you could play. Oregon played basically a mistake-free game, almost perfect from Dylan Gabriel, and we saw Will Howard crumble under pressure late in the game, just take a sack on that last drive that really put Ohio State behind the sticks, and obviously the slide with time on the clock running out at the end of the game. We saw a lot of mistakes from Jeremiah Smith, the freshman wide receiver, which we haven't seen the rest of this year, a pass interference that was talked about a lot later after the game ended, but a lot of stuff that just hasn't been there all year reared its head in that game. And I think that's why I felt so good about Ohio State leaving that game and looking back at it when I was able to clear my head and have some time, is because hopefully Ohio State's going to be able to clean up those mistakes by the time they play a Penn State, an Indiana, an Oregon again, and be a more buttoned up team, a more polished team, a more fundamental team, because that's the easiest stuff to fix. If we went out to Oregon and just got beat by talent, I would feel a lot worse. But I really do feel like Ohio State played their worst game that they've played in a long time. I mean, Denzel Burke's an All-American. He allowed 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. Yeah.
All right, there you go. We'll transition over to the NFL now when we come back. Again, Ohio State, Nebraska tomorrow at noon. Big noon kickoff. They'll have big noon kickoffs the next couple of weeks, of course, with Nebraska tomorrow. And hopefully, fingers crossed, a top 5 showdown with Penn State a week from tomorrow as well. All right, this is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kenner, Casey McAllister in the producer chair, Elliot Rearing and Jacob Tissett. We'll step away, and we'll be back in a few moments with our – what week is it? What week of the NFL are we even in?
Are we in week 8
Week
already?
8.
Woo.
Flying
Season's
by.
flying by. Week 8 NFL picks when we come back. All right, we welcome you back. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett with you here, 1410 ESPN Radio and Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. I lost track of what week it is in the NFL, but week 8 officially kicked off last night in a very good game between the Minnesota Vikings and the LA Rams. And many people thought that, for the Rams, it was kind of a chance to put Matthew Stafford on display as well as Cooper Kupp because the trade deadline's coming up. And there was a lot of talk about potentially, by the way, Matthew Stafford almost trying out for the Vikings. But Matthew Stafford might have been too good last night, because I think what ended up happening is he was good enough to the point to where now the Rams are like, well, why are we looking to ship off Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford? We might have something here. The Niners absolutely banged up. The Seahawks are good and sitting at the top of the division now, but I don't think people are sold on them to win that division. The Rams looked good last night with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, Matthew Stafford, the run game, the defense. They checked off a lot of boxes. But the Vikings, 5-0 to start the season. They've lost back-to-back games. Now all of a sudden, still looked good, don't get me wrong, but kind of coming back to earth a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's something that a lot of people did end up predicting. I think a 5-0 Vikings team with Sam Darnold at the helm was something that surprised a lot of people. And obviously I was high on the Vikings coming into the season, but it surprised me too. I didn't think Darnold would be playing this well, and we've seen him kind of start to turn back into that pumpkin a little bit over these last 2 weeks, playing some pretty good teams. I mean, I know the Rams are still very banged up, but that's a team that just won a Super Bowl a few years ago. Stafford's still a hell of a quarterback. Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua coming back at an inopportune time for the Vikings and playing really, really good games in their first games off IR. So back-to-back losses, a 2-point loss thriller against the Lions, and then obviously last night really questionable at the end there with the face mask. This Vikings team is still a good team. It's still a really good football team, and I expect them to still make the playoffs. It's just going to see how they fare against that top-end competition. Lucky for them, they don't have a whole lot of it left on their schedule. They have Colts, Jaguars, Titans, 2 against the Bears, Cardinals, Falcons, Seahawks, the back half of the Packers and Lions series for the divisional games. This team's going to be able to rattle off a lot of wins. I just think over the last 2 weeks we saw what it's going to look like in the playoffs or deep in the playoffs. When they're playing this level of team, I just don't know that they're necessarily there yet.
Yeah, I think that the Vikings I think that they're capable of winning a playoff game, as is most, if not all, of the teams in the NFC. In the NFC North, I think that it's a strong division. I think the Bears are the one team in there that you look at and it's like, okay, they've only beaten bad teams. Maybe they're not for real. I think the Vikings, and I was wrong about them coming into the year. I didn't believe in Sam Darnold. I didn't believe in anybody outside of Justin Jefferson. They have the talent. They have the talent to be successful this year. They have the talent to win the NFC North. I don't think they will do that, but I think they're a playoff team, and I think they have the capabilities of winning a playoff game. And once you win a playoff game, it's anyone's game. You can do whatever you want in the NFL postseason. It only takes a couple to get to the Super Bowl, and then boom, you're there. I don't think they're going to win a Super Bowl for what it's worth, but saying that, they certainly have that opportunity. They certainly have the chance. The Detroit Lions, I think, maybe should be the odds-on favorite to win the Super Bowl, which is a crazy turn of events because I didn't think that was going to happen this year. I think a lot of people thought that there was going to be regression there, and it's just been the complete opposite. Obviously, you lose Jamison Williams, but outside of that, they've been and Aiden Hutchinson. But outside of those two things, they've been phenomenal.
All right, as we wrap up the radio portion of the show today, we'll little quick hits here. Again, we'll give you our Week 8 NFL picks. We picked 5 games that are the most intriguing heading into the week, and then we'll try to squeeze in as many other picks as possible. But let's start with this one. Again, I have not seen any update as far as the Washington Commanders, of course, with Jaden Daniels as far as what his availability will be for Sunday. But this was supposed to be a big-time matchup between the two top quarterbacks in the most recent draft. Who do we got right now as the Chicago Bears with Caleb Williams? They're -3. They're favorites. They're a 3-point favorite on the road at Washington. Caleb Williams versus Jaden Daniels. Maybe. What we make of this one? Again, the Bears are 3-point favorite as we sit right now. You're shaking your head.
It's sadly not going to be Caleb Williams versus Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels has not practiced yet this week. Obviously, the door's still cracked open. They haven't ruled him out, but usually once you get to Wednesday and your starting quarterback hasn't practiced yet this week, then you're not going to play him. So real soul-crushing. Marcus Mariota. So still very fun to watch. It's going to be an interesting game. He was able to put 40 points up on the Panthers last week. Jaden Daniels left that game very, very early. It was basically all Mariota. So at least still an exciting game from that sense. I mean, 2 Heisman Trophy winners still. What are the chances of that? So it's going to be a fun one. I am going to take the Bears -3. I think that's a steal without Jaden Daniels in there. I know the Commanders have some good players. They have a good offensive system. But at the end of the day, I'm taking the Bears. I probably would have taken the Bears even with Jaden Daniels playing.
I'm gonna take the Bears, but I hate it, and I hate it. If Jaden Daniels plays, I'm taking Jaden Daniels, but I don't think he's going to play.
Do you think the Commanders would have been favored?
Oh yeah, yes.
By how much?
It's on the road, right?
It's in.
Oh, then they would have been favored by.
It's in Washington.
They would have been favored by 3.5.
So you're saying Jaden Daniels is worth 6.5 points? I don't think so.
I think so.
There's no player in the NFL worth 6.5 points.
I think there are. I think there is. I think Patrick Mahomes is absolutely worth that.
6.5 points? No way.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. If you take away Patrick Mahomes from the Chiefs, what are the Chiefs? What is that off?
Well, you're saying Jaden Daniels is worth the same amount as Patrick Mahomes?
Well, I'm just saying I think it's pretty damn close.
I'm saying I think the Bears probably would have been -1 with Jaden Daniels playing. There's no way he's worth more than 2 or 3 points.
Yeah, we'll see what Mariota can do.
Yeah, look, I like the Bears in this one. I mean, they've won 3 straight. They've quietly won 3 straight again because they get off to that 1-2 start, and Caleb didn't look good early on. People kind of discounted it because keep in mind at the time, Jaden Daniels, he hijacked all of the media attention with how dominant he was. You know, they win that primetime matchup against the Bengals, and he balled out. He didn't just put up big numbers. He made big throws in crunch time moments of that game, especially on the road the way that he did. So he started to, hog a lot of the media attention in that regards, but Caleb Williams has been really good over the last couple of weeks. I was down on him coming in. I thought maybe being propped up a little too much, but you're starting to see just how special the kid is, and that's why they've won 3 straight, and obviously I think they're going to make it 4 straight. I'm picking them to win, especially with Jaden Daniels out. I don't know how I would feel if Daniels was playing. I'm bummed that that's not going to be the matchup that we get to see this week.
And this is why they flexed the Bengals game. Bengals game would have still been at 4:25 if they knew Jaden Daniels was hurt, and Jamar's upset about that one. He can't sleep till noon anymore.
There you go. Next up, the Buffalo Bills. are on the road, and they're taking on the Seattle Seahawks. A sneaky good game this coming up weekend. The Bills trade for Amari Cooper last week. They get a big win this past weekend. They've continued to win despite not having a lot of explosive weapons on offense, but they are a 3-point favorite on the road at the Seahawks. We see the Rams get a big win last night. If you could add that with the Seahawks loss this weekend, it would be huge for the Rams and how quick things turn around for them. But the Bills are -3 at the Seahawks. Who you have in this one?
I'm gonna take the Seahawks. I think that if you're the Buffalo Bills, I think you're the better team. But I think the Seahawks at home, I think they have the better defense, and I'm rolling with the better defense in the regular season. That's just what I'm doing. Saying that, I do think the Bills have the best quarterback with Amari Cooper. The offense looks better, so I'm gonna take the Seahawks, but be cautious about it.
I'm taking the Seahawks as long as it stays at a full 3.
Yep.
If we get down to 2.5, I'm running over to Buffalo. But as of now, I am on the Seahawks. I think they have a really, really good defense, like Elliot just said. And I expect Kenneth Walker to run wild this weekend against the Bills.
Kenneth has been battling an illness for what it's worth. He has been battling an illness all week long.
He was out all last week with an illness, and he played.
Correct.
I'm still gonna roll with Buffalo on this one. Right now, I just really like the way Josh Allen is playing, and I'm not really gonna say that they get Amari Cooper, and that's a big difference maker. But just having a guy to balance out the lack of weapons that they have, I don't think Amari Cooper has played like a true number one this year by any means, whether it was with Cleveland or Buffalo, even in the one game we've seen. I think that Josh Allen and the Bills are the favorite to win their division, of course, but they're on the road in a tough environment. I'm not sold on Buffalo big picture, but if they go on to win on the road against a very good Seattle team, I'm going to be all in on Buffalo out of the AFC at this point. Not over the Chiefs by any means, but I think it's a bigger opportunity for them than the Seahawks at this point, and they're rolling right now. Put 34-10. They dominate a bad Titans team last week, and I think that they get another big one coming up on Sunday against the Seahawks.
Excited to see how that offense continues to mesh with Amari Cooper as well. I mean, he's a really, really good, legitimate number one receiver, and obviously Bills fans were talking all offseason that it didn't matter that Stephon Diggs left.
Yeah.
Certainly seems like they thought it did. They went out and got a number one.
All right, next up, the Cleveland Browns, and they have now entered the Jameis Winston era. 38 starting quarterbacks since 1999. Well, you can now make it 39, which is 9 more than the next team, which is the Chicago Bears on that list, I believe. Like, they just keep adding to it. So the Cleveland Browns at this point with their 39th different starting quarterback since 1999, Jameis Winston, on the road taking on the Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens, one of the hottest teams in football, they are an 8.5-point favorite with Cleveland coming in. That's a big line right there. How do you feel about this Browns at Ravens matchup this weekend?
I am all over the Browns.
Yep.
Love the Browns this weekend. Absolutely love them. Couldn't be a bigger Browns fan now, honestly, with Jameis Winston at the helm. I love that guy. Eating crab legs and W's. That's all you're going to do the rest of the season, Kenner. I wouldn't be so quick as to rule out the playoffs. You only have one more loss on the schedule until you play the Bengals again. Jameis is going to get a lot of wins. He's going to make this team very, very fun to watch. 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions coming up.
The only reason I'm not going to laugh at you or yell at you, I promised Mama Tissa I wouldn't yell at you. I feel like you're mocking me, so I'm going to just.
I love Jameis. I absolutely love Jameis.
I cheered for the Browns last season. People forget. When Joe Flacco took over, I cheered for him. What did you say this spread was?
-8.5.
Ravens 8.5.
I'm going to take the Browns. I'm going to be back in on the Browns because it's Jameis's time. It's Jameis's time, and we're going to win it all. We being Jameis Winston fans.
That's
so,
right.
Saying all that, the Browns are a joke. Their franchise is a disgrace, and what they've done to their fan base. Honestly, the front office should be ashamed of themselves. Saying that, they're going to get one back this week. They're not going to win outright, but they'll cover this spread.
Standing on a corner up in Cuyahoga, such a fine sight to see.
We don't steal bits on the
go.
show.
No, we don't.
Obviously, non-homer take here, but not only look, I'm going to take Cleveland to cover here at Baltimore, but it would be the most Browns thing ever after you've shot yourself in the foot at 1-6. I don't think the playoffs are a possibility at all with this team. But it would not surprise me one bit for them to go on the road and beat Baltimore with Jameis Winston at quarterback at this point. And it has less to do with, Jameis Winston, I think, is good enough to make just enough plays. Keep in mind, Baltimore has one of the worst passing defenses in the NFL. I think Cleveland can move the football on Baltimore. I think Jameis Winston is a very, he's a competent quarterback, which is something Cleveland hasn't had in a while since Joe Flacco, obviously, because Deshaun was not, providing that. I think they're going to move the ball on the Ravens. I think Nick Chubb's going to have a much better game. I mean, he was not good against Cincinnati and first came back after that reconstructive leg surgery, of course. I think that Cleveland's going to run the ball significantly better, and I do think they're going to move the ball on a Ravens defense that they can't stop anyone in the passing game. But most importantly, the Browns defense is set up for the Ravens. I'm not saying you totally shut them down, but if there's a defense out, there's not many defenses out there that can contain Lamar Jackson. The Browns have had the defense over the last couple of years that have proven that they could do it at times. I like Cleveland in this one because it would be the most pointless big win of the season. You beat Baltimore on the road, goody, you're 2-6. I'll go with Cleveland.
By the way, we all picked Cleveland, so that means I'm on the Ravens, just so we're all clear.
That screenshot of the three is getting tweeted, by the way.
I hope it doesn't.
Oh, wait, I'm tweeting it on Sunday morning.
I hope it doesn't.
Ooh.
Well, I already have the screenshot. It's too late.
People don't forget. Steelers at Giants, Monday Night Football. The Pittsburgh Steelers -6 on the road at MetLife, taking on the Giants in this one. Again, coming off an impressive win against the other New York team and the Jets on Sunday Night Football.
I know.
Yeah. Pittsburgh -6 on the road at the Giants. They beat the Jets last week in prime time. Can they do it again this week in New York at the Giants? Who you got in this one?
I don't believe in the Steelers, man. I don't care who they run at a quarterback. I don't believe in them. Justin Fields, Russell Wilson. I think Russell's a better quarterback, a better passer than Justin Fields. But at the end of the day, do you trust that offense to work cohesively? They beat the Jets, who are a joke. I mean, we can only sit here and say, we talk about the Jets for so long. The Jets are a bad football team. They're bad. And there's nobody saving them. And the Steelers destroyed them. Absolutely destroyed them. I'm going to take the Giants +6. I'm going to take the Giants +6. I hate to do it. It's a gross bet. But I think the Giants win outright. I don't think the Steelers can just keep winning games. They can't do it. I refuse to believe the Steelers are going to make the postseason. I refuse to believe it. They have to lose somewhere. They're going to lose this game.
I'm taking the Steelers -6.
They get Neighbors, right? Yeah. Neighbors is back.
Neighbors should be back. I'm taking this. He played last week, but
he
just didn't play well. But I'm taking the Steelers -6. I think they're a really good football team. I think they're fundamentally sound, and I think they're going to be able to take care of basically everything that the Giants do well defensively. I don't think Tyrone Tracy's going to be able to run on the Steelers' front seven, and I really just don't have fear in Daniel Jones' arm if that's what you're forcing them to do to beat you. So I'm going to take the Steelers regardless of who they play at quarterback.
I like Pittsburgh -6 in this one. I'm not a Steelers fan by any means, but I'm tired of watching Pittsburgh win football games getting no production from their quarterback position. And, everyone that made a big deal about Justin Fields, how you can't pull the starting job from him. He's 4-2. As I mentioned, Kenny Pickett was 14-11 as the starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mason Rudolph was 8-4-1. A lot of quarterbacks, a lot of average to bad quarterbacks have won football games in Pittsburgh as the quarterback. I don't think Russell Wilson is those guys. Russell Wilson's not the MVP, or he's not that Super Bowl caliber quarterback that he was with Seattle in years past. But we saw last week, I think that some of it had to do with the Jets defense, Elliot. I'll give you that. It's not like it's a great football team. But we've seen Pittsburgh make bad defenses look good in the past while winning ugly football games, and they made it look easy. What was the last game that Pittsburgh won easily? Now, I know there's a blowout win a few weeks ago. I get that. But I just mean in regards to a balanced game with the pass. I really liked what I saw from Russell Wilson, and if I see it again, and I think that we will, I'm going to be all in on Pittsburgh being a legitimate AFC contender, not just for the North, but out of the whole thing, big picture. So we'll see what happens, but I do like Pittsburgh at the Giants on Sunday.
I don't like that Kinner and I have agreed on almost every pick.
I just think, if you look at this,
every pick.
The Steelers have beaten who? They've beaten the Chargers without Justin Herbert. They've beaten the Raiders without anybody.
Yeah.
They've beaten the Jets, who stink. They've beaten the Broncos, who stink, despite their 4 wins. By the way, they scored 13 points in that victory. And then they scored 18 points against the Falcons. The Falcons are a fine team. The Falcons might make the playoffs.
That was Kirk Cousins' first game off an Achilles injury.
So I just don't buy the wins, and I know it's hard to sit here and make fun of a team that has 5 wins, but it's just I don't buy it.
But what if I told you they played another crap team this week?
Yeah, I know.
Then they start losing when they play the Commanders, Ravens, Browns, and Bengals.
Yeah, maybe that's what they need. I don't know, but I at some point the wheels have to fall off. I believe it.
I just think you're a week early. I think you're a week early.
Well, we'll see if I'm right.
We'll see. And last but not least, as we wrap it up on the radio side here, our Week 8 NFL picks. The one that was flexed out of prime time so that you can get Marcus Mariota against Caleb Williams. Yeah. Jalen Hurts and the Eagles on the road at Cincinnati taking on the Bengals. Cincinnati, 3-point favorites at home for the 1 o'clock kickoff against Philadelphia on Sunday. How we rolling with this one, boys?
I'm taking the Bengals -3 because that's what needs to happen for me to get back in on this team long term. We need to dominate a legitimate Super Bowl contender, or at least a team that has some serious talent on both sides of the ball, and that's exactly what the Eagles bring to town. And we have to start winning at home. If you can't win a whiteout game at home, when I'm sure that crowd's going to be jumping, I'm not sure when you're going to start winning here. So the Bengals absolutely need to pick up this win. It would be a nice catalyst into that Raiders game before the Ravens game and give you a big boost to confidence against a really good team, a team with a lot of weapons. And if the defense is able to hold them to a point where the Bengals are able to win this game convincingly, then I really do think I'm going to have a lot of confidence in this team moving forward. So it couldn't be a bigger game for the Bengals. I love the -3. I think it's a great bet. I think the Bengals are going to take care of business this weekend, but I love the over even more. I think this is going to be a shootout. I think both teams are going to be able to put up big-time numbers with those two elite wide receivers on both sides. The number right now is sitting at 47.5, and I think that's the easiest bet in the world.
I'm going to take the Eagles. I hate doing it, but I'm taking the Eagles because I'm trying to jinx them, and this is the only way I know how. I think the Bengals win this game. I think the Bengals are hot right now, and I think if you're able to score points on the Eagles, if they can give me 24 points, they're going to win this football game. Shut down Saquon. That's the key. Make Jalen Hurts throw the football, and we'll see what happens. I don't want to take the Eagles, but I'm going to have to take the Eagles. I'm going to say Bengals win this game 24-23.
Sign me up.
So right now, hater, but I'm going to roll with Philadelphia. But I think it's going to be close. There's just a couple things I need to see from Cincinnati. I will not let my Browns fandom dictate how I pick the Bengals moving forward. This is a game that, again, I think you can make an argument. I know the Chiefs are the two-time Super Bowl champions, but this is the best offense at this bad. Again, we a lot of people think this Bengals defense is really, really bad, right? This is the best offense I think that they've played all season, including going up against Kansas City. I know Washington was explosive, but when you look at the fact that you have Jalen Hurts, who's led a team to a Super Bowl, you have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, you have Saquon Barkley, obviously, and I think that this is one of the better, more well-rounded teams as well when you look at what they have on defense. And again, I would feel better about picking the Bengals had they not looked so average offensively the last couple of weeks, because we thought the identity of this team was explosive, high-powered offense with the bad defense. But then the last 2 weeks, very good defensively with little offensive production. Yeah. If that little offensive production carries into this good against this good Eagles defense, and that Bengals defense is bad, I think that this is going to get ugly. I'm stuttering left and right. My apologies.
You're good.
I think this game can get ugly if the bad defense and the bad offense for the Bengals the last couple of weeks shows up. How much of the improved defense in the last 2 weeks has more to do with the fact that you've played the Giants and the Browns, and how much of it is because that you've improved? We'll get that answer on Sunday. But why are we seeing the Bengals offense struggle the way that it has the last couple of weeks? Is it because they've been up against good defenses? Philadelphia has a good defense. That could be a potential recipe for disaster, because if the defense is going up against a good offense, and they are in the Eagles, and they light them up the way the other good offenses have, and if the good defense of the Eagles neutralizes the Bengals offense the way we've seen the last two good defenses do, I think Philadelphia wins this and can win by double digits if it pans out the way the Cincinnati Bengals have looked the last couple of weeks. I would like to think that the Bengals offense is not as good as what we think it is, and the defense is not as bad as what we think it is. I think you meet in the middle there. I still think this team's good enough to beat Philadelphia, but I have to see it first. I'm rolling with Philadelphia on Sunday.
Yeah, and for all the reasons that you just laid out are why it's such a big game for Bengals fans. You have to see what this team's made of at some point. And this is a perfect test on both sides for the offense to go up against a very good defense that matches up their strengths with our weaknesses, and an offense for the Eagles that has more talent than maybe anyone in the league with the injuries in San Francisco right now, and matches up perfectly their strengths with our weaknesses. We're going to see exactly how far this Bengals defense has come, and myself and Bengals fans just hope it's come far enough and hope it's closer to the Giants and Browns defense than what we've seen earlier this year. The other thing that keeps scaring me about this game is those shootouts that we've pointed to all year long, the Commanders and the Ravens game, that 38-33 loss and the 41-38 loss.
Yeah.
The two games we've played this season against dual-threat quarterbacks. Neither guys put up gaudy numbers on the ground, but both were able to run to throw very effectively, and I think that's something that really scares me this week with the Eagles.
What you got in your hand there, Elliot?
It's the Bengals helmet.
It's the Bengals helmet. It's a beautiful helmet.
It is.
Houday. There you go. There you go. Big weekend ahead. Any other games that you have circled that that really have your interest this weekend? I mean, we've covered most of the big ones.
I try to distract.
There's
Jacob
some good
there.
games this weekend. I think Arizona and Miami is an interesting one because Tua is reported to come back.
Correct.
Miami's a 4-point favorite with Arizona coming to town. Arizona is a team that I really liked coming into the season, and I talked these guys into, and they haven't really been living up to the high expectations that I've set for them. But 3-4, still better than a lot of people expected. I think how they fare against that Tua-led Miami offense is going to tell us a lot about that team going forward. And then two teams that started off the season pretty well, and then Houston's still sitting at 5-2, not a huge fall off, but a loss to the Packers last week, turning around playing a division game against the Colts this week. That's going to be a big one to tell us what Anthony Richardson is and where the Colts might fall in this AFC wildcard race. Certainly a team I have my eyes on as a Bengals fan.
Yep. Go ahead.
You're good. Cowboys 49ers is another big one on
For
Sunday
sure.
Night Football. Yeah, I think that's a big one there. I think that the Cowboys 49ers is a big game for the Rams. I know that sounds silly, but last night I think the Rams could have won an ugly game, and I still think we could have potentially been talking about a trade for Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford. But because they won it and looked impressive, and they won because of those guys, I think right now they're trying to decide still. We still can't don't confuse good with great. As we heard Mike Tomlin say a couple weeks ago, the Rams can't fall in that trap because they can't let this get in the way of. They can get some value back for Stafford and for Cooper Kupp. And if you are about to start a rebuild, you need to get some of those high-quality draft picks, and you risk that deteriorating if you move forward just to get knocked out in the wild card. So I do think if the Niners win, it might change their tune a little bit. If the Niners start to get healthier over the next couple of weeks. But if the Niners lose, they could say, hey, forget it. We're going all in to win this division and give ourselves a shot. So I think that's why that game is so big.
This is a huge game for the 3-4 49ers as well. If you can get back to 500, It was announced today that Christian McCaffrey is expected to be back week 10 or around there. So already here in week 8, if the 49ers are able to get to 500 without Christian McCaffrey and then add that piece to their offense with hopefully Deebo Samuel getting healthy and getting back soon. Obviously, Ayuk out for the season, and then reported earlier today during the show that Jawan Jennings is doubtful as well for this weekend. So Purdy's going to be pretty sparse on the weapons front, but it would be a massive win to keep them afloat in the NFC without their key weapons as they look to come back soon.
My game before Kinner interrupted me was Panthers-Broncos.
Nice.
That's a fun one.
That game stinks, but it's the revenge of Bryce Young.
Bryce Young, Bo Nix. Oh, I can't wait to take that over.
Final score 3-2.
No. We're in the 40s.
40s.
We're in the 40s.
By the way, that's a big game. That's a massive game because if the Broncos somehow find 5 wins this early in the season, I'll be outraged. I'll be absolutely outraged.
And by the way, let's put it this way. So you talked about how annoying the Steelers' record is at this point. I'd say Denver's way more annoying than that. Pittsburgh at least has a defense. They have a defense that they could fall back on, but Denver is mathematically very much in the middle of this. And if they do get to 5-3, look at how bad the Chiefs have been. They were 3-0. They're 6-0 now, but 3-0 to start the season. They could have easily lost all 3 of those games to start. And Denver has to be kicking themselves because realistically, if Kansas City stubs their toe like they should have in a couple of these, Denver could be sitting atop this weird division right now. So we'll see. I am curious to see what the Chiefs look like with D-Hop. We'll get that answer too. So nonetheless, but that wraps it up for us on the radio side. So much for my clock management skills there, Elliot, because
they went away at the end. They went away at the end.
It went away, almost a perfect game.
Good Friday, though.
I got
Good
shelled.
Friday.
Third time through the order, I got shelled. So,
That's right.
Better luck next time. So until that wraps it up for us on the radio and YouTube here today. We head into the weekend. We hope everyone has a great weekend. Chatterbox Bengals on Sunday, right, Jacob?
That's right.
Obviously.
That's right. Kick off the final whistle, and we got a post-game show coming right after. So big win. Hopefully another Bengals win. We'll be able to recap.
All right, good stuff. Until next week, this has been Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers.